Blessed risings, good afternoon or good evening, depending on where in the world you are tapping in from. You got to keep in mind that Keep It P podcast is a global show. And today on this episode of Breaking News, we will be discussing this terrorist attack that is anti-FBA. Let's talk about it. Why weren't the barriers up? Why was this man allowed to crash through the crowd that is known to be predominantly black, the neighborhood, the city, right? Where someone who would think, being from another country, ISIS, that you can call them American born, whatever you want. But it's well known that this is a black city. Let's be honest. That's why Kanye famously said George Bush doesn't love black people, right? Right? How come we don't know nothing? You let Jabbar, Shamsud, Shamsud Din Jabbar, 42. They keep saying he's a U.S. Army veteran. We got to let you know that. So then he has plenty of resentment for FBAs. He has anti-FBA sentiment. He killed over 15 people. I wonder how many of them were black. Rest in peace to all of them. Prayers go to all the victims. But I'm saying this is a specific act of violence targeting who? It's a terrorist attack. He had ISIS. Look who he targeted. There's many questions underlining his motives and the systematic failures, right, that allowed such an incident to occur. Why? This would never happen at NASCAR. This would never happen at the Super Bowl. This wouldn't have happened at the Sugar Bowl because you have protections put in place. You say you're New Orleans. We have you have all kind of conventions. So you're used to this type of security, right? You're used to these type of events, right? To keep everyone safe. Everyone safe, right? But why is this attack raising troubling questions as far as foundational Black Americans concerned, right? This didn't look like it was deliberately targeting. Maybe it was a diverse crowd, but possibly predominantly black. You know, Bourbon Street. You know, historically, huh? And it's not, especially New Orleans has a historical violence against the black communities, right? Right? And it seemed like why isn't this on every channel? Why aren't we breaking into TV shows? Why was it a thought even, maybe we'll postpone the Sugar Bowl? Why did it take so long to still prioritize money, to still prioritize sports over this horrific act? Were the police officers that were shot and killed, were they black, the two, right? Were they black? That's what it's seeming like. Where's all the crying, the heartbreaking for these officers' lives and all the lives of the people, the 15 people and the over 35 people that have been injured, right? There's bombs all over still, right? There's no emergency. Why isn't it cleared all out? They're still missing bombs. They found some, right? I feel like this attack reflects an ongoing pattern of erasure when black lives are at stake, right? We just gonna pretend like this never happened. If you're calling something as the biggest attack since 9/11, this is how the mainstream media is talking. If this is how you feel, then why isn't this more important? It took forever to postpone the game. Forever. And then it's just till Thursday. Oh, that's just postpone it till tomorrow. See, too much money's at stake, right? Forget about the lives. Forget about the black community and who was targeted. No. Forget about this tragic event. We have sporting events we have going on that we need to worry about. Forget about the long-faced systematic and overt violence that that affects our community. No, 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 no. Don't forget about the institutional neglect of hate crimes, the cultural erasure, like trying to steal hip hop, right? Right? I mean, we can draw plenty of parallels to other moments in history where Black communities bore the brunt of targeted violence, such as this one, while authorities hesitate to recognize or address the underlying causes. We don't know why he did this. All we know is he had an ISIS flag and then he came and he killed y'all. We don't know. We killed him right away, but we don't know why. We don't know where it came from. He got bombs hidden. We can't find them. We don't know what's going on. I'm trying to understand what was his affiliations, what's his motivations, were there warning signs that were ignored because he was only focused on FBAs? Where's the accountability? You say there's resources, but I'm not seeing them. It seems like it's moving awfully slow and you're not doing proper protocol and procedures, right? If this was to the magnitude y'all say, and if it wasn't a lot of Black people and FBAs involved, then why are we dragging so many feet? Why is your feet being dragged? Right? See, this serves as a grim reminder of the ongoing threats that FBAs face. Even in times that are supposed to be of joy and celebration, we're always looking over our shoulder. Police, attacks from anyone at any time, for any reason, just for being Black, just for existing, just for having a culture, just for being. That's it. That's it. Let's not talk about where were the barriers. This is an iconic street. Well, why was there so much negligence? Is it possibly you knew about these racial motivations that Jabbar had? You know it has high traffic. Why did it lack the basic safety measures? You have a proven history of large gatherings on this street. Why was there an absence of precautions? These are troubling questions. The barriers weren't in place. Why? One of the busiest nights of the year? Why? Hello, McFlizzle, not trying to tell you what to think, trying to show you how to think. That's why we break down the articles the way that we do here on the Keep It P podcast, where we take news situations and everyday occurrences and we show how one could or could not be keeping it P. And I'm your host, TZ Von Savage, in the place to be. We don't know nothing about his background. We ain't hear no whispers. He wasn't on the, you trying to tell me he wasn't on the radar? This follows a pattern of anti-FBA sentiment. All over X, you can see it. This isn't a shocker. Where's our crime bills? This was a systematic disregard for Black lives in spaces that we occupied, and there was no vigilance, no solidarity when it comes to us. Where are the actionable steps? That's what I want to see. That's what I want to see. I'm going to let y'all hear these excuses that they got for y'all. Let's tap in with all the excuses. But I believe that this was a targeted FBA attack. That's what I believe. And that's where I'm coming from with it. Here you can tap in. Here's some of the lies that they're going to spew
in all the sidewalk. There's some device
let
there.
the mail
and
continue.
You can put a cement block there for that matter, temporarily until you get your bollards fixed. So I was surprised that's a mistake. They admitted it. The chief admitted it was a mistake of the lapse of security, and this incident, it could have been stopped. And why didn't the car pursue? There's a lot of incidents here.
Yeah, Pierre, where does the investigation go now, based on what you heard from that press conference? Well, right now, they're doing a detailed background investigation on it. They know he's an Army veteran. They now have information on residences. There's a location that they're possibly looking at in New Orleans. But every known residence, every known associate, they will be searching. They will be talking to people that know this man. And again, a situation like this, the most important thing is to find out who was he communicating with in the final hours and days before this took place. You know, were there online chat rooms that he was using? I'm sure that there are search warrants that are being executed. The FBI now can get warrants to surveil all of his electronic devices, if he had any, all phone calls, if there were any private chat rooms, again, that he might have been using. Again, you have to understand who was this person communicating with, who did he have access to, where did he get the money to buy the parts for the explosive devices, how did he obtain the firearm. All these are things that are now under active investigation. It is probably one of the most intense investigations I can recall in recent memory, in part because of all the different layers that they have to get to the bottom of.
Pierre, including whether or not there are any more devices still out there. We heard law enforcement talking about how they've done a sweep. And Aaron, you're learning more about some of the devices that they did find.
In fact, you heard the FBI say they found 2 IEDs, confirmed IEDs, in different locations. We're also told from law enforcement sources that in the vehicle, or right around they found homemade pipe bombs containing coils and nails. They also found at least 1 grenade, as our sources described it to us. All of these things were being tested for viability. The pipe bombs appeared to have been, homemade, prepared by someone who either had explosive insight, and that could be a result of military training. As Pierre says, they'll run down what exactly he did in the Army and what his circumstances were. But it also, I think, speaks to the insidiousness of the intentions here, because there were a number of these kinds of crude devices that had been located, according to our sources, in addition to the 2 confirmed IEDs as described by the FBI.
And Brad, when you're putting that together and you hear how complex, right, the 3 different pronged approach to this attack and more information that we're hearing now about these devices and so on, what does that tell you about what you're kind of a suspect you're dealing with? He is now dead, obviously, but they're trying to piece this together, who he was, what motivated him, how he put this together. What sticks out to you?
So you've got a suspect that's a little bit older than we typically see in these attacks. He's in his early 40s. The Army veteran part of this is pretty intriguing from the standpoint of, Aaron brought this up, what was he trained to do in the military? Does he have expertise of some sort in explosives? And when they say a range of suspects, does it maybe include people that he used to be in the Army with? I don't know. It's another area, obviously, you would look at anyway. But this is a pretty strategic attack. Again, I don't want to overemphasize. It's pretty simple. If you're willing to drive through a bunch of people, anybody could do that if they're willing. But the idea of now described as multiple types of explosives, from IEDs to hand grenades, potentially pipe bombs, that stuff himself. Did he learn it online? Or did somebody help him build them? Which clearly would be suspects. Now, take that with somewhat of a grain of salt. I'm not saying there aren't direct people involved that helped him do this, but it may be people that encourage these type of attacks. You can charge them too, potentially. But there's a lot of tentacles to this case that hopefully they've got their arms around. But we're going to have to see if, in fact, there is a range, a direct range of suspects. That is troubling, because if he talked to other people about doing this, if you're going to have a conversation with somebody about doing what he did, then you're a person that may also potentially go do something like he did. And so that's the key, and that's where the immediacy comes in these cases. What do they need to stop?
And police obviously And law enforcement in general are concerned enough that they have now postponed the Sugar Bowl that was set to take place in New Orleans tonight. And again, police are now saying the suspect is identified as Shamsud Din Jabbar. They did find an ISIS flag in the vehicle, and now they are exploring whether he had help in this event. Now, some of you may be leaving us for local programming, but our live coverage continues right now as we follow more on this deadly attack in New Orleans. I'm Diane Macedo. Many of you have been watching our continuing coverage here of that deadly terrorist attack in New Orleans. Police have now identified that suspect in that truck ramming attack. The FBI says he may not have been working alone. The FBI special agent in charge confirms his name is Shamsud Din Jabbar, an Army veteran from Texas. Authorities say that they're working to determine if he had any ties to ISIS. He's accused of ramming a white pickup truck into a crowd on Bourbon Street amid the New Year's celebrations. At least 10 people, injuring dozens. Authorities say he then opened fire on responding police, injuring 2 officers before he was shot and killed. The FBI also says explosive devices were found in and around the scene, with at least one of those devices deemed viable so far. And now law enforcement are asking for the public's help for any information about the incident, the suspect, especially anyone who's had contact with the suspect in the last 72 hours. I want to bring in our Chief Justice correspondent, Pierre Thomas. Pierre, we just heard from officials there in New Orleans not long ago, and the big headline here is that they don't think this guy was working alone.
They do not. They kept using the words they, them. The FBI special agent in charge talked about a range of suspects that are being pursued. In regard to the IEDs, I want to get to that as well. The fact that there were multiple IEDs found in multiple locations raises the specter that the suspect may have been there doing surveillance for some time before these incidents took place. And also, it raises the possibility that there may have been help in planning these devices. So again, this is why law enforcement is at a fever tilt right now, pursuing this investigation. The notion that he may have some kind of support. Now, what is that just support? Encouraging him to do this act? Was it people who may have had knowledge? But there's clearly something very specific that is leading law enforcement officials to push this, that there are other people that they're being pursued. One of the things that they want to do early on in these investigations, Diane, is tell the American public when they can that the person acted alone. In this case, they are not doing that. And that makes it unique from some of the recent cases that we've seen, like the 2 assassination attempts against former President Trump. They were quick to say that the individual acted alone. They are not doing that in this case, which raises lots of implications and is probably one of the reasons why you're seeing the game, the Super Bowl, the Sugar Bowl being postponed at least 24 hours. And we'll have to see if they're in a position to let the game go forward tomorrow night.
And Aaron, you're learning some more about some of the explosive devices found in and around the scene here.
According to law enforcement sources, Diane, there were pipe bombs that appeared to have been homemade, crude-type devices stuffed with coils and nails. At least 1 grenade was found, according to our sources. All of these things are being tested to see if they were viable. And it does raise a concern, again, about the suspect's intentions, whether he had any help in constructing these devices, whether he had any specific training in explosives. You heard the FBI acknowledge he was an Army veteran in his early 40s. What did he do in the military? We've asked the Pentagon to pull the service record. But one of the most urgent questions is how many more might they find? The police have conducted a grid search. They've used drones and cameras to go through the French Quarter and beyond to determine how many of these things there may be, where they might have been found. At least 2 viable devices were in 2 different locations, according to the FBI. So they want to cast as wide a net as possible, Diane.
Brett, how much does it change things when you know that you have someone, a suspect with military experience, in this case, an Army veteran?
The reason, has he been in combat overseas? And what did he do in that combat? I mean, all of these things go to maybe state of mind, maybe state of mind, maybe training. It's really hard to say because people, Diane, who end up doing these sort of things, obviously influenced probably in his case, by some sort of radicalization, but it may also play into his history in the Army to some extent. Who knows how much? So that's another piece of this puzzle that they're going to have to figure out. May also help them potentially lead to other associates or people even maybe directly involved in this in some form or fashion. I mean, with all of the explosives that he had, combined with what he had just committed on a sidewalk, was this supposed to be multiple devices set off? I assumed he would probably get killed or kill himself, presumably, because that's just how it goes. But he had other plans beyond that, setting off these IEDs, probably getting into shootouts, maybe shooting more people on the sidewalk. I mean, this could have gone on for several more minutes if police hadn't stopped him. So that's somewhat unusual based on what we've seen with lone actors. We've talked about attacks over the years of theaters in Europe and so forth where a lot of people were killed, but the bad guys went with force, with multiple people, with automatic weapons. Well, this has these added factors to it that make it really troubling, which tell me that he really did plan this out. And I won't be surprised if at least there's other people involved, perhaps in the planning. I'm going to guess they weren't there, but clearly in the planning.
And earlier I spoke with eyewitness Jimmy Cothran, who was there on Bourbon while the attack happened. Here's his account of what he saw unfold in front of him. Jimmy, I know this is really difficult to talk about, so we thank you for sharing your story with us. Can you tell started and what you saw?
Just a regular night. A friend of mine had never experienced New Year's on Bourbon, so I decided to take him. I was the designated driver, so I was sober, remember everything. Everything was fairly normal for a New Year's in New Orleans. We were heading back towards Canal when it looked like just a large commotion or something was going on up there. We weren't really wanting to fight through that. We figured it was just some nonsense, so we ducked off into a nightclub. And within 2 minutes of being in there, 4 or 5 frantic females run in, duck under tables, get out from under the table some more. So figuring New Orleans for New Orleans, we thought it was a shooting or something going on that was going to follow into this club. We ran upstairs to the balcony, knowing there was a balcony up there and it would be our better spot. And once we got out there, what we seen wasn't anything I wish anyone else. Just a melee of movie prop looking bodies, mangled for both directions. The beginning, we were closest to Iberville, so pretty much right where it started. At its what I would think is its worst, because those people had no heads up, and the footage you're showing there, that is some of the footage that we did not want to share on Facebook, but that is a mother. She had a wedding ring on her finger. Just the body's positioning, terrible. And the gentleman down there, he had tire marks on his stomach when they rolled him over to check on him. He also had tire marks on his back. He was completely crushed. I mean, there was an easy 6 instantly visibly deceased, just based on body position and blood and more graphic details. And they wouldn't let us, I mean, it was minutes, several minutes after witnessing this, they wouldn't let us outside. And I'm trained in CPR, personal response, and all of that due to the nature of my job, and they wouldn't let anyone go help. And I understand. And also at that time, you had the green military-style officers on foot, probably 10 of them running down Bourbon towards the direction of M16s. They basically kept us where we were for about an hour and a half or so.
What did we learn here today, boys and girls? Pay attention to what they're saying about this attack. Make sure you pay attention. It don't cost you nothing to pay attention. You heard it here first. I believe this was a targeted attack on Black people. That's it. That's all. I ain't gonna hold you. I'm just gonna mold you, fold you, and scold you about being off code. Gonna leave you with 4 words, as we always do around this time. Subscribe for the vibe, like for the spike, comment your environment, and share if you care, if you dare to get Black empowerment everywhere. We are on all the platforms: Apple, Spotify, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, Facebook. Come and take a look. You might get hooked, but don't get shook by the fake Keep It P podcasts that are out there. We do have imposters. We do have people pretending to be us. So don't get fooled. Love, peace, blessings. In Maloha, I gotta go high for show high. You already know how. Big brother, light bright, supreme almighty, signing off.
Vaughn Savage Media. Vaughn Savage Media.